So the great thing is when you start creating sounds for your game, the game kind of comes alive, right? That's the great thing about it, right? The one thing is you can see graphics that are on the game itself, but the game doesn't really have a life to me unless you start getting some sounds going, almost some feedback for the user to know that they've done something, to make it sound like there is a collision happening, right? So that's why we're going to be focusing on sounds as well. And it's just like it says here, there's a lot of royalty-free CD-ROMs and stuff that you can download and order and everything else, clips that are totally unencumbered out there. And although you have to know if they're not royalties attached to them. But again, we're not making anything we're going to be selling anytime soon. So even if there's royalties attached to them, I'm not going to dock you for using something that's you've stolen from the internet for this particular assignment. Right? It's only an assignment. It's not something that we're going to be using. It's only for educational purposes for those people watching on YouTube. All right. Again, when it comes to Audacity, I would ask you to explore it. You can do a lot of stuff, like you can record your own tracks. You can try recording multiple tracks. You can layer your recordings, your sounds, so that they sound unique. And I'll leave that for you to check out on your own. Okay? Let's talk about playing a sound in Python. And I think this is important. So if you guys would join me now, for those of you who want to learn how to do this, join me in Aptana Studio. Let's try this out. Let's try playsound.py. And let's take a look at the idea framework here that's involved. Right? So here's playsound.py. I'm just going to maximize this so everyone can see what it is. Okay, so again, here's the idea framework. We import. We initialize. Right? Import initialize in this particular case also includes our mixer. Right? We have to do that. So we not only initialize the Pygame framework itself, but also the Pygame Mixer. All right? And this mixer is actually included as a module within Python, or Pygame. We create our screen or window, top-level window like we talked about before, 640 by 480. We set the caption of the window, the title bar of the window, to play sound, right? And then here, from a background perspective, this is our container that's contained inside the window. So we have a top-level container, again, review from last week, and then we have another container called background that's inside of our top-level container, and it's a surface. Okay, in this particular case, and we're going to talk about surfaces today with sprites. This surface is the size using the screen.getSize method that's included in Pygame. We'll get the size of the screen. So it's basically the size of the screen. It fills the size of the screen with how big it is. Okay. Our background is equal to. We're going to convert it to make it so it's compatible with Python and Pygame. That's what this function does. This convert function. And again, if you hover over it in Aptana, it tells you what it does, right? So it changes the pixel format of an image, right? And then we're going to fill it with 255, 2550. So who can tell me what color that is really quickly? Red and green together. Yellow. Yellow.
Red and green together is yellow.
Yes, it is. Try mixing it with real paint. We're also going to use this font. We're going to create our own font here. We're going to call it my font. We've done this last week as well. And we're using a system font. That's what this is called, sysfont. And you can look up all the system fonts that exist that you can use for free, that you don't have to load as a file. This one's called Comic Sans MS, right? So 30 points. I'm just saying. The label is you're going to render it, and it's going to say press space to hear a sound. Right, as an example. So that's what we're going to render this label. And if you look at the render function, if you hover over it again, so here's my font, and I'm looking over the render function. Here it is. Right, so I hover over it, and it's going to tell me information about the function itself. Okay. Uhu is going to be the variable that we're going to assign this sound. And we're going to load it ahead of time before we initialize the game loop. And it's going to say, woohoo! That's what it's going to sound like, basically, right? Huh? No, it's the guy, it's the dude, like actually like recording his voice, going, woohoo! Right? So I want you to try it. So your machine should be able to try playing this. You won't hear it with me because again it's in my ear, but you'll hear it for yourself. So if you click on, if you actually run this code, right? There's your yellow background, see? And if you press spacebar,
Woohoo!
you're going to hear a woohoo. There you go. And that's all it does.
Is it going to overlap? So if user is pressing space repeatedly multiple
Woohoo!
times, is the sound overlapping
Woohoo!
itself? And if it is,
Woohoo! Woohoo! Woohoo!
Yes. What you can do is you can stop the sound from playing until the loop is done, which means you can create a delay. And you can also stop the, because remember, this is what we're doing here, if you notice, is we're looking at a game loop. And the game loop has an event handler that we're using, right? So the event handler is listening. It's listening for a key down type of event, and we're looking at the space bar as the type of event we're listening for, and it's going to play the sound, right? But there's nothing that says that we can't put a code in here that says if the sound is playing, right? So wait for this long before you do this loop again, like before you actually run through this again. Because basically, this sound loop is going to run through. It's going to keep checking to see if the space bar is pressed. So if you press it multiple times, it's going to keep on accessing that sound loop over and over again, so it'll overlap,
so
right?
if you have a delay, is it going to stop the function of the space bar?
No, you have to actually tell it.
Stop the sound.
You have to say that if it's already playing, you have to check to see if the mixer is working, and there's functions to do that, right? Don't go through this. Or you can actually put a flag saying, if they press the space bar, my playing sound is on, right? So if my playing sound is on, you ignore my next space, right, kind of thing. And then when it finishes playing inside the sound function, wherever it's playing the sound itself, you can say when the sound is done playing, after you release, you say my flag is off. And when it goes back in there, if it's off, then you can press the space bar again. You see what I'm saying? You can create flags like that to do that. And there's other methods, but there's some simple ways of doing it to prevent yourself from doing that. And that's what you need to do if you're making your own game and you're firing bullets. You don't want it to go bang, bang. You don't want to do that. You want to make it go pang, 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 pang. And it's going to be the same sound as the was that? Hey, it's the way you decide. Yeah, it's true. It's the way you design your game, though. If you want your game to have unique, sounds that are articulate, right? That you hear them and they're separate from each one. Each sound is consecutive as opposed to overlapping. You can do that with some code. Okay, but that's what this thing does. So again, and it tells you. Really, this is within the idea framework itself, right? Here's your event loop, right? This is your action, the action part of your idea framework. And you're listening for the keyboard space to be pressed or the escape key. If you press the escape key, it also quits the game. So both those two things, whether you press the quit button, the X on your window, or whether you press the escape key, either one will exit you out of the program. Okay, so that's how this program works. And in here, we're going to see how it's going to break it down the exact same way. So again, pygame.mixer.int. And in it, that is the way to initialize the sound mixer part of the game, right? Again, we're using an OGG file. You can use other kinds of files as well. MP3 would totally work as well as WAV files. Those are the three formats that you can totally use and it wouldn't be an issue, right? Oh, one mention here. If your sound is AAC compatible or some other layered sound file that's MP3, it may not work. So you may have to convert it to WAV. And there's some programs online websites you can go on as an example, and then they'll convert the file and you can save it right back onto your hard drive. Or you can use Audacity to do that.
It's usually bigger than MP3, right? Like a lot.
Yeah, well, it depends. Depends on how you save it and what's the compression and all that stuff. But yes, generally it is. But it's okay. It's fine. Whatever works is the way I think about it, right? And for this particular case, you're making a sound for your game. If you're going to make a sound file, like if I'm going to use my mixer, if I go back to Aptana, and here's Pygame in Python. If I actually hover over this thing, it's going to give me a bunch of different options, right? So if you look at all these options here, there's options for the file, the buffer, if you're going to use a buffer, an array of sounds that you can use, so one sound after the other. There's lots of little options, and I recommend that you don't just, do the bare minimum here. You can actually look at some of this stuff if you go up online to look at Pygame Mixer, and it'll give you all the options of how to do more things with sound than just these. Yeah.
Sort of kind of just change the subject here, but is there,
Yep.
like, we never have yet learned how to actually make our Python programs like single executables or something that we can launch outside of.
Later. We'll do it later, near the end. Yeah, there's actually a Py to exe module that you can use.
Working, I couldn't, because you need it for certain versions of Pygame.
Pygame 2.7 will work. Anything that's in 3 or later has trouble working, right? For 2x, it's okay. It'll work, right, typically.
And that'll make it so even if you don't have Python installed, you can still.
It'll run within Windows, only Windows. It won't work on Mac because it's a Py to exe, right? So, so that's the stuff, yes. But there's other ways of converting. If you actually go online, there's a lot of other converters out there. If you want to convert Pygame to a Windows executable or Pygame to a Mac type convertible a script file, and so on. Or a Linux. There's other things that convert those files so that you don't have to have Python installed at all. Totally true, right? Just like a VLC media player, right? VLC media player works on any platform, and it's written in Python, right? So that there's ways of converting it to all the different formats, no problem. And I encourage you to look at online. There's way better resources that you can look online than I can probably show you here. But before the end of the course, I'll show you how to do it. Okay. All right. So really that's where we're at with sound. So we've kind of created a sound. We talked about the space. And again, there's two things you need here for when you actually listen for events from a keyboard. Okay. One of them, like we talked about last time when we looked at paint.py, is the key down event. So I'm listening for a key being pressed, right? And the other one is, what key am I listening for? In this particular case, it's the space bar that I'm looking for. K_space is the type of key. And if you look at, if I actually go back to my Aptana, and if I was to make another one, like let's say, for example, I copy this line, and I want to make another elif statement, right? So I copy this line here, and I paste it. So here it is. And instead of this escape sequence or whatever, I want to make another key work, right? Well, all I have to do is, in Aptana, again, if I press period, it's going to come up with a bunch of different options for me right here, right? So here we go. I just press the dot, which is looks at the method. And if I look down, it's going to give me all kinds of other ones. Look, K break, K caps lock, and so on. All the different ones I need. I don't have to know what they are. It lists them kind of over here right away, right, within Aptana. And if you have any other, there's other IDEs that do similar things, it'll give you the same kind of options. All right, so if you don't know if you want to do a different key sequence, it's right here. You can also look for them online if you don't want to, if you don't have an IDE that does this. And if I want to look at the Pygame Mixer, I just go here and I go Pygame Mixer, and then it's going to take me to the docs for Pygame 1.9.2, right, which is the current version that I'm using. And it actually, if you scroll down, it gives you all the details, the buffer, the channels that you want to use, the size, and so on. It gives you all the different details here. Presets for the mixer. You can stop the mixer with a quit command. You can do all kinds of stuff, right? Test if the mixer is initialized. This is where you can test to see before you load a sound and try and play it. Because if you try and play a sound when the mixer is not initialized, it'll error out. So there's different things you can do. You can stop or pause the mixer and so on. You can fade out. There's all kinds of little built-in functionality that you have with the mixer control for Pygame, right? And it's all built in here. And here's the sound object that we talked about before, right? So I wanted to create a new sound object with the file name and so on, and it gives you examples on how to do this. Here's the play. The play method actually starts the sound, and if you notice, loops is equal to 0 is the default. Max time is equal to 0. Fade in milliseconds is equal to 0, and so on. These are all presets that are included in the play method constructor, right? Well, you can modify this. So, for example, if you want to change these, the loops to make it loop infinitely, just put a -1 in there, right? And it'll loop. It'll do an infinite loop of your soundtrack, as you play your sounds. And that's why I'm saying I think the best thing to do if you're going to create your own special effects is to really explore some of the stuff that's in here in your documentation that's up online. There's so much up there, and it's really quite clear as to how you can use it and what to do with it. And even if it's not here, if I want to know how to make it, let's say, for example, I didn't think to look here on my Pygame .org docs. I can just, again, type in with my Google and say, make, soundtrack Pygame, right, as an example. And then you might be able to go here and it'll give you an example of how to do it, And there's so many people asking questions, and there's probably your question's going to be answered somewhere. Okay, so I'm not saying to steal the code. I'm saying it's good to get some of these examples from other people that are having similar problems as you. And if you can't, it's really about if your Google foo is strong enough, right, at this point, and not just for here, but for any programming language, right? If you're trying to do something in a programming language you're not familiar with, I would encourage you to look at the docs for that language thoroughly, and/or look at Google. So there's a plug for Google for you for those people on YouTube. All right, let's go back to playing sound. And we talked about this already. Modifying the sound. You can look online for the mixer object online for details, fade in and out, and so on, left and right, do all kinds of stuff. Okay, are you guys good with the mixer object? Here's what I want you to do for the next few minutes. Try and download your own sound, right? And instead of making that woohoo sound, and I know it's easy to do. You think, hey, this is easy, Tom. Try using another sound, like a wave file of your own choice. Right? So we press that space bar, or press another key, try another key instead of the space bar, and try and make the other key do whatever sound you want it to make. Maybe do 2 or 3 sounds. Right? And you can do that by modifying this loop right here, okay, before we get into sprites. And I'm going to pause the video as we do that. I'll go around, and then we're going to go back into sprites. Okay? So again, the ask is, here's my event loop, and right now I'm listening for a quit, the top of my bar, the X on the top of my title bar. But in here, if it's a key down event, I do a nested if statement that allows me to check for different keys. So put the key of your choice, try different keys like W or A, S, D, those kind of keys on the left-hand side, or try your arrow keys. And when you press the arrow button, it changes the sounds. Okay, so do 1 or 2 sounds. Okay, I'll give you a few minutes to do that, and then I'll pause the video.